Good day, everyone. It's good to welcome you to this episode of the Blaze Connected Construction series. This is a live series we'll be having bi-weekly, and we'll be featuring interviews with stakeholders and thought leaders in the industry. So I'm the host of the series, and my name is Onyema Udeze. I'm the co-founder of Blaze Inc., which is a BIM consultancy and IT integration outfit that's based in Nigeria with a construction tech media outlet where we host online courses, webinar series, and live series as this. So this is part of our media outlet. So today I have in the house Victoria Ikede, who is
Hi.
currently the so Victoria is currently the BIM and assistant quality manager for ATO Architects, and she's vast in so many other technology related activities. I mean, she's a product designer, a graphic designer, and also a web designer. And before now, she was a postgraduate teaching assistant at the University of Sheffield School of Architecture, UK. And she's passionate about digital transformation in the build sector. So she spent a lot of her time exploring digital transformation trends such as computational, parametric, generative designs, digital fabrication, rapid prototyping, and so many other things. So it's my pleasure to welcome Victoria to the session today. Victoria, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. After hearing that introduction, I need to confirm what I'm still working on. I'm doing quite well, thank you.
Yeah, it's great to have you today.
Saying I'm
So,
happy
like,
to be here.
yeah, so as you can see, the topic of discussion today is basically centered around using software, being software centric, and how it can impact your career. So, basically, what informed this is that to realize that a lot of young professionals in the industry tend to focus on being software proficient. When you come out of school, one of the first things you spend a lot of your time doing is how to become very proficient in software. Maybe you believe that will make you land a job and all that. So while we are not saying that that is a bad thing, we just thought that we should shed some light on some of the pitfalls and some of the mistakes to avoid while you becoming software centric. So Victoria, from your own viewpoint, what do you think informed this session?
Yes, personally I I'm I'm looking forward to this because I'm looking forward to sharing my own experiences. I'm kind of volunteering myself up as a cautionary tale to many people because before I got on a more defined path in BIM and computational design and so on, I remember being so focused on using Revit. And at the time, I genuinely was trying to be an architect, like a registered architect. And in hindsight, that was a very, very bad strategy for me. Luckily, it has worked out for me because I'm now in a very tech focused career, but it could have easily been one of the biggest mistakes I think of my career. So I'm here to basically shine a light and maybe raise some important questions in the minds of our viewers.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
so that's pretty much it. So we are basically trying to talk around the topic. So before I start, I would also like to find out what exactly drew you to technology. I mean, what drew you to technology in the first place? Why did you get interested in technology?
Um, I'd say I've always had an affinity for technology since I was young. It's something that has come easy to me, I think, and it has kind of become a path of least resistance. I didn't realize until much older, until I started interacting with people in university and so on, that some people actually struggled with technology. And I don't even mean like coding. I just mean you have a new application, you launch it, you use it. That has always been my thing. I find something new, I launch it, and I get right onto it. And I didn't realize, especially until I started working in my current role, that it's not something many people are able to do. And so for me, it was just easy. It's the less. difficult thing for me to have done. So that's how I just kind of stayed with it up until now.
Yeah, I think for me, I didn't start using technology so early, but of course, as far back as my days in school, I've already started making use of a lot of software. And yeah, of course, as we grow in industry, we are beginning to learn much more about some of these things. So, but why do you think that so many young professionals are fascinated by using software? I mean, learning how to render and all those stuffs. Why do you think so many young professionals dabble into that in the first place?
I'd say simply because it's fun. Especially for architects, it's the main reason why most young people in the first place decide that they want to be architects is because they love to draw, or maybe they are really fascinated with graphics and illustration. And the typical thing is some parents somewhere will say, "Oh, you are a good artist, therefore you should be an architect," which in reality doesn't necessarily translate. So it's fun. You do something and it's like instant gratification, unlike most other things in our work where you have to spend a lot more time to see the result. Renderings give you that instant feeling of happiness and seeing almost like a child that you birthed or something on the screen. So I think it's just fun and enjoyable. But I also think that there is another angle where many young people are not able to access knowledge on other aspects of the profession. For example, construction, maybe they just don't have the access to work on site or other things. They don't. Mentorship, I think, is one of the things we could improve on in this industry. I think that we just don't have access in terms of people they can talk to or online resources even where they can really learn about some of these other things, unlike rendering. And so I think that's even one of the things this session is hoping to address a little bit.
Yeah, that's very true. So I think most of the other skills in the industry or some other things we do, they tend to take a lot of time before they kind of master it. But when you dive into something like rendering or 3D modeling, it's one of those things that you can see the outcome very quickly.
Exactly.
So it is quite understandable. Okay, so you work at a considerably large practice. I mean, you work at 8 years Architects, which is one of the largest architectural firms in Africa with offices in Nigeria, South Africa, and so many other parts of the world. So, how much do you see these skills matter in the workplace? How do you see them play out in the workplace?
I would say for junior entry level roles, they are it's good. It's definitely in your favor to have strong 3D rendering skills, especially when compiling a portfolio. I'd say for an entry level position, it's good. Anything above entry level, it absolutely does not matter. For the most part, construction documentation skills are preferred because those are the less, like I said, fun aspects of the job, which are typically the areas that kind of fund the business, so to speak. Because the most people forget that the design and the visualization is just one stage and it's usually really early on in the process. So once you get the job, now what? Which is the title of this session. So those skills that come after the rendering, after the design, after you've convinced the client that it's actually a really nice idea you've got, I think those skills usually come more in demand once you're seeking for anything above entry level.
Yeah, that's true. Just like so many other things in life, sometimes we just are so focused on starting something, we are not kind of thinking about what actually happens after that. So, which is the attitude we kind of take to the profession as well. We tend to learn how to model these things, but we don't think of how to actually execute the projects down the line. After we've designed these projects, we've modeled it, how will this thing be translated to a real life project? So those
And
kind of
more and more,
yeah.
sorry, more and more, even as I do product design and other things, I'm realizing that the ability to execute, the ability to actually get something from an idea to something people can touch and interact with tangibly, I think that's the crux of the matter. I think anyone given enough time, can be creative enough to do something in 3D. The difference between the people that make it to the mainstream in quote are those people who are able to build something out of nothing. And I think those are the things that any ambitious young person should actually focus on more of the time.
That just skills and
Yeah,
yeah, so
than just rendering and design and 3D modeling skills.
yeah, that's very true. I mean, we've been discussing how people tend to focus more on 3D rendering and some basic skills in the industry. So we've mentioned how that could be negatively impactful on their career. So what do you think exactly they should focus more on instead of focusing on 3D rendering and those basic stuffs?
Okay, so the first thing I would say to anyone, especially people who are maybe in school or just starting out their career, is to have put away all the noise, put away all the Instagram fame, forget about the likes, forget about how people think you're so creative and how cool they think you are because your work that you put on your status or your page is so amazing. Forget about all of that because, like we all know, or we come to know eventually, fame and money are sold separately. Um, and you do need money. I mean, most of us are in capitalist society, so you can't ignore the fact that your income is quite important. It shouldn't maybe be the most important thing, but it's quite important. I think the first thing anyone should do is to have a sit down with themselves and decide what kind of career they want. If you're going to be a 3D visualizer, I think an advice someone always used to give me is find the best person in that field and see if it's that person's career that you actually want. If you're trying to be an architect that builds buildings, then you need to focus on construction skills, construction documentation skills, detailing, specification writing, contract management. There are so many boring aspects to the work that significantly affect the success of a project. At the end of the day, we're building spaces that people need to live in. It's not that they don't come and live in the computer or in the 3D rendered image. They live in something that is built. So if your aim is to have a building built, you should really apportion maximum of 10% or 20% of your time on 3Ds and renderings. It's good to sell the work, but like we said, selling the work is just the beginning. It's not even the middle, it's just the beginning. So don't spend too much time perfecting the beginning. And then if you want to be someone like me who is almost like a BIM, who is actually a BIM specialist or a technology focused person, then there are actually other more impactful tools that you need to learn: coordination, costing, project simulation. Those other aspects of the project life cycle, apart from design, actually have they all have software related to them, and learning those ones will be more useful to you. In fact, I'm even realizing that I would probably be more helpful to everyone if I knew how to use Revit for structural engineers and even mechanical engineers, because those are the real challenges professionals face. Almost every decent person decent professional, sorry, can render. So the skill is not, and at the end of the day, what are you trying to do? Communicate an idea. So if you can communicate it however you can, it's done. You don't need, it doesn't need to be as extremely perfect as it's starting to seem on social media. So that's just what I think.
Yeah, that's it. So a lot of times you see that the bigger issues on the project is coordination and I mean collaborating with other stakeholders. These are some of them actually have to do with even soft skills that go beyond software expertise. And then even the tools themselves, we're talking about technology, there's still project management software and all this coordination too. So when people focus more on just designing and creating 3Ds, they tend to pay less attention on all these coordination aspects, which is actually what eventually gets the project delivered. I mean, translates the idea to a reality at the end of the day. So, which is what, of course, like you said, that's a lot of things that people need to also pay a lot of attention to as professionals as early as possible into their careers. Okay, so that's quite clear. So, considering that many people are so interested in visualization today, how do you see this affecting the profession in the next decade? I mean, most of these young professionals are talking about today, they will go ahead to become the future of the industry tomorrow. So how do you see this focus on technology and this basic stuff? How do you see it affect the industry in the next decade?
I think that we're going to have the world is excuse me, the world is already a global village, right? Already people are doing freelance work everywhere anyway. I think what's going to happen if people don't start taking other parts of the profession seriously, because I think that the truth is at the end of the day, by the time you get into a proper professional practice, which is another discussion for another day, how many practices are actually doing things the right way. But when you find yourself working in a decent place, and you want to progress in your career, because I think one misconception that most of us have, especially as creative people, is that once I show my value, I show how amazing I am, then I will get the rewards. And the real world doesn't really work out that way. You kind of have to deliver the value the other person wants. It has very little to do with what you think is valuable and everything to do with what the other person thinks is valuable. Which is why spending too much time on renderings, and don't get me wrong, renderings are important. Um, in terms of value, your client is not an architect, which is another thing most people forget. They are regular people who would be impressed with the most regular rendering and get the idea from that. So it's not about the value you want for yourself, it's the value you are giving out. So I would say people who are able to offer value in other things like contract management, construction management, specification writing, and all of that would probably come from other countries and take some of those roles and then just employ us that are good with our renders. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, you can't really run a practice based on design and renders. You could probably run a rendering studio, you could probably run a 3D modeling studio, but you can't run an architectural practice. And so, if your dream is to be an architect, but you've only developed this one skill, then you would just be someone's employee. That's the best you could hope for.
Yeah, so that means in the near future, if we don't buckle up as professionals, we'll see most of our projects taken up by, I mean, foreign
Competent
companies,
hands. Yeah.
by foreign companies, and then employing the local experts
Talent. Yeah.
or the local champions to
Exactly.
to execute the project. Yeah, so that's quite a cautionary tale and something that a lot of young professionals need to pay good attention to.
Embrace.
So basically, while you are learning the skills, the basic skills, you should also look more on these other boring aspects of the profession, because at the end of the day, in the long run, they will probably be more valued or more valuable than this, because everybody can now design, everybody can render, everybody can produce 3D models. So it's those ones that are not so easily available that will not become more valuable in the long run.
Exactly.
So okay, so do you render as a profession, as a professional in the industry? Do you render? And if you render, why? If you don't render, why not?
Okay, the short answer for that is no. I don't render in the way that many architects do, where they spend hours tweaking reflections and light settings. I use very intuitive tools that are sort of click and go. I don't like to spend too much time on renderings, and I render only to communicate the idea. So for my products, I just use the default rendering for interior space, some of the projects I work on. Because in my firm, actually, um, everyone is being trained to be able to handle all aspects of the project, both the design, the construction documentation, the site supervision, even down to understanding the quantities on the project. So you kind of have to do everything if you're assigned a project. And so in that capacity, I do render, but not, I do not in my learning time spend a lot of time learning how to render. I learn almost every week. I put in at least 15 hours of learning something I don't know. Um, and I never think about learning how to render. So I think as far as my rendering skills are, they are going to be where they are for a long time. Early on in my career, like I said, I was really software focused. I was doing some crazy things with Revit. Then Revit rendering was good enough before 3D Max came in. I never got the hang of that one. Um, and so then, yes, I was also in the craze of trying to make a really amazing image for my Instagram. But as I've gotten, and interestingly, now I'm in a fully tech focused role. Like I'm not actually required to um, participate too much in the design or like building. I'm actually just the same person now. And I find that rendering is the last thing anyone needs from me. There's so many other technology related needs in a business. Rendering is not one of them. There's at least 4 or 5 architects that can handle that very well. That is not what they need from me. So I'd say no, not in the way that most people do these days. I don't.
Yeah, I think like you also mentioned, when you spend so much time assigning materials, tweaking, sometimes when you look at it from a project viewpoint, it's as if you are spending so much time trying to create a reality that does not yet exist, which that's not what is going to get that project executed in the long run. Of course, there's a place for it. Like you mentioned, it's good to sell projects, it's good to convince the client, but of course, that's not what is going to eventually deliver that project. I mean, translate the project to a rebuilding and all that. So it's quite understandable. I myself, I'm not a rendering person. If I have a project, I'd rather outsource it to a rendering specialist because there are people that specialize in that. But yeah, so I guess we are both on the same page to an extent. Okay, so it's been quite a great discussion. But before we round up, I mean, before we look at some of the questions that we have here, we also like us to play a quick game. So
Yes.
I'll be calling out some trends in the industry, some of them trendy, some of them not so trendy. And then you tell me if they are overrated from your own point of view, if you think they are overrated or they are underrated. So I'll just be calling
Okay.
them. And then if you also have some reason why you chose what I mean, whether it's overrated or underrated, you can also expand on that just a bit before we round
Yeah,
up.
disclaimer, this is my opinion. This is not fact. So you are allowed to completely disagree with me.
Yeah, definitely, I understand. Okay, so the first one I have here is hand sketching. Do you think it's overrated or is
Underrated.
on?
I think it's
Okay.
very underrated. I think there is a thing with your hand and paper that just works differently than, and this is coming from me who rarely sketches. I know the difference, especially when I have to actually design something. I know the difference in thinking when I put pen to paper than maybe going to a SketchUp or a Format or something. And it's almost similar to writing, like maybe you're journaling your thoughts in a diary. It's different from typing it on a computer or writing it on your phone. There's just something about the body and the mind that connects in a very different way than body and technology. So I'd say underrated.
Okay, yeah, that's quite convincing. So how about rendering? We're talking about rendering all this while.
I
What do you think?
think I think rendering as a skill is overrated, but as a product, that is as a side effect of what we do as architects, I think it's properly rated. I think like we all know, most of our clients are not technical people. They do not understand drawings. They do not understand all those technical things. They need something very simple to communicate the idea. So it's properly rated in terms of importance. But as a skill for a professional, and like I said, it's important to define your career path. It's fine if you want to be a full-time visualizing person, but you have to choose it. Do not think that you will choose it and still end up being a professional and be good at it. That's just my thing. Like, define where you're going and then focus on the skills that will get you there. So as a skill, overrated, but as a product, it's properly rated, I think.
Okay. Yeah, thanks for that input. So how about general knowledge of construction? I mean, knowledge of the construction industry and
Industry.
yeah, the
Um,
project execution.
I'd say that is properly rated. However, I don't think it's something most people have access to, just based on the fact that in many cases, most architects don't even get to see their buildings built, or you get clients who just take the design away from you and build it without even letting you know. So it's one of those things where everyone knows how important it is, but very few people actually have access to grow their skills in that area. So I'd say properly weighted. Everyone knows it's important. It's just that maybe it's kind of tedious or difficult to access, and so most people still struggle with it.
Yeah, I think that's true. So
Yeah.
how about BIM, building information modeling? This is a very it's a big
that's
buzzword in
my
the industry.
that's my
So
job. So I have to. I feel
yeah.
like as a BIM manager, I feel like I have to say it's underrated. But in reality, I think the promise of BIM, to be very honest, is a bit overrated. I think BIM as a methodology, I think BIM as part of what we do is underrated. I think it saves a lot of time and money in a way that people are still not taking advantage of yet. But I think in terms of the social media hype and just the promise, there's this illusion of what BIM is supposed to do. And I think that is kind of overrated, to be honest. I think it's just going to make us a lot more efficient and save a lot more time and money. But I don't think it's going to be the utopia that many people who I think, to be honest, are just trying to sell us their software products um, are purporting it to be. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think people just create some ideal world that, considering the resources we have in place in the industry today, we might not be able to attain that idealism or whatever it is that being promises at the moment, maybe at the near future.
Hmm. Yeah.
Okay, so how about smart buildings? Smart building is also another trend we tend to see a lot in the industry today. What do you think?
I think smart buildings are completely underrated. Um, excuse me, especially for people like us in Nigeria who spend a lot of time indoors because our surroundings are so very, very hot and uncomfortable.
Y- Yeah,
I think there's a lot we could get from our spaces, our houses that we are currently not enjoying. And I think smart buildings. And then the other thing is, I don't even believe that most people know what the word smart building means. Probably they're thinking something very technical and like there's wires in the house and the house can sense your mood. I mean, there's that, but there's also some very simple concepts of smart building, which I don't think anyone is talking about enough in general, just because we spend so much time indoors. So why not just like get most of our out of our spaces that we can?
yeah, I think it also has a lot to do with the way we also work in our industry. We just work a lot of time in silos, so we are not thinking of the final product. So as
Yeah.
architects, you just feel like the final outcome or the way end users
The way people
or
use
bus
the building is
the
really
way,
not your business.
yeah, the way they experience the building is not really your business. So even when you design it, you're not thinking of the user experience and all that. And then the ones that eventually promote smart buildings end up promoting it as a luxury. So they see it as, you know, using a remote to control your building or monitoring your building from, but
Exactly.
the utility aspects of it, people don't even think about
People
that.
don't
They
really,
tend
and
to,
I don't think people even know about them to start with, let alone
yes.
think about them. Yeah.
So I think it has a lot to do with misconception and also the way our industry is designed at the moment also.
Hmm.
Okay, so that's quite it. So how about sustainability? Sustainability is also another big trend we have today in the
It's
industry.
so much hype. I think
Yeah.
sustainability is extremely important, especially since we have climate change and all these things facing us every day. I think sustainability is extremely important, but I also think it's highly overrated. I think construction as an activity is not sustainable. The amount of damage we do to the environment just to get a building built is not sustainable. I think we are the last people that should be screaming and shouting sustainability. There's so much waste from even the smallest of buildings that we do not account for, and then somehow we still slap on the word sustainable design because we have one or two solar panels on it. I think most people, if people were actually doing it, then it would be fine. But I think it's just a buzzword for most people. It's just a way to sell a project. So I'd say
Yeah,
overrated.
yeah, I also think as professionals, when we talk about sustainability, we tend to focus on some things we do during design, like you are doing solar analysis, you are thinking about building orientation, you are thinking about shading devices, and some of those things that we do during design. But at the end of the day, the things that eventually matter, that eventually impact the building more, are the things we do during the construction stage.
Hmm.
What materials do you use? What
How do you
systems?
how do you cater to the life you've displaced in the bush that you just cleared?
Exactly.
You don't think about those things.
What systems you integrate into the building? How does that affect people around the building and all those things? So you see that those things are not really things that we think of during design. During design, we just do the basic. okay, this building is facing south. We have used shading devices on the north, and there is a solar study and some of these stuff, which might not eventually translate to the eventual construction stage. I
Building,
don't know.
exactly.
Yeah,
I think
yeah. So
that
that's
if we were more, if we're paying less lip service to it, then we would be better off. But unfortunately, I think most people are just paying lip service when it comes to sustainability.
yeah. So that's quite clear. So how about 3D printing or rapid prototyping, as some people call it? What do you think
I
about
think
that?
I think 3D printing is still at its infant. It's still a kind of early stage. So again, like smart buildings, most people don't know about it enough to understand its value. So I'd say it's underrated. Um, I think it has a potential for becoming overrated as well, but for now, it's still mostly underrated. I think that 3D printing can do so much in terms of making buildings, like democratizing how we do buildings, because there's less manpower input, there's less human requirements. It's mostly your computer files designed and taken straight to the printer. And now there's so much advance like the technology has advanced so much where you're now able to 3D print full size human size buildings. So I think a lot of people are still not just, I think it's still not even getting the buzz it deserves in terms of what you can do. I recently 3D printed a product for BIM Africa, and I promise you there is no one who would have achieved what I did by hand in the amount of intricacy and detail that it took me to achieve it. And it even changes the way you think about design. It changes the way you think about structure and how buildings support each other. So I think we're just not paying enough attention to it yet. Maybe because it's still at its infancy, or maybe because the hardware, which is the printer, is still on the pricey side. But I know it's one of those revolutionary things that's going to really make a difference. So I'd say underrated.
Yeah, I also think the market generally is not mature enough. So I believe that with time it will get more relevant and has more application in the industry.
Exactly.
So how about coding and programming? I mean, this is also another buzzword in the industry today.
Another, yes. Well, I think coding is, I'd say coding is properly rated. Because I believe for those who need it in their careers, they know the importance already. So, like a BIM manager should probably learn how to code. It's one of the skills you do need in at some point in your career, and I think everyone is already aware of that. But if you're going to be maybe a construction professional, someone who manages projects on site, or an architect, like a registered architect, licensed architect that designs and builds buildings, I think coding is overrated. I don't think you need to code to do your job. You can just hire someone who can code. I'd say it's important that everyone knows what coding can do for your business so that you don't, again, spend a lot of time. Because, the interesting thing is, I think people still spend the amount of money they would use developing a solution with code. They use it to employ someone to do that job very slowly and very painfully over a period of time, where you could actually just get an app or a software to do it and pay for a one-off build. So I think everyone needs to educate themselves on what coding can do for our profession, but I don't think everyone needs to learn how to code.
Yeah, so I think it just boils down to career paths. So
Exactly.
if you feel like coding is very pivotal to your career path, then you should spend more time on it. Otherwise,
Exactly.
you can just employ someone to take care of that.
Hmm.
So how about Photoshop? Today, Photoshop is more like a verb or a term, and no more a software. So
Yeah,
do you think it's overrated or underrated?
I think it's very underrated. It's properly used in like the photography industry where they have like wedding photographers, makeup artists. They know the power of Photoshop. I think architects and designers are not using Photoshop enough. Maybe among the younger architects, it's already gained some popularity, but in like a couple of generations above us, for example, I think they spend a lot of time doing things they could very easily Photoshop, especially when it comes to visualization. So I think I'd say it's underrated. I think more people need to get on that Photoshop train.
Yeah, yeah, that's quite true. So how about virtual reality?
Yeah, virtual reality for architecture again, it's almost like rendering. Anything visualization, I think, is kind of overrated. Um, for some industries like the gaming industry, or if you're a researcher where you're using gamification to test people's reaction to spaces and all of that, it's quite important. But for delivering a building, it's still just a marketing tool, and so I think it's kind of overrated.
Okay. So the last one I have is animation. What do you think about animation?
Yeah, animation, virtual reality, rendering, they're sales tools. They sell the idea. So you've sold the idea, what now happens? Who's going to build it? Who's going to ensure no one gets cheated? Who's going to ensure the client's money is enough to do the project? Those are the things that pay the client and you. So you spend all this time making your marketing presentation while forgetting that you actually have to deliver on the job. So yeah, in terms of hype, I just think they're all overrated, but it's not to say they're not useful. I just think they're overhyped to me though. That's just my opinion.
Yeah. Okay, so it's been some great conversation, although I seem to have lost access to some of the comments. I don't know
Okay,
if you
I
can,
still have access to them.
so you can just click on them, they will show on the screen and we can address them.
Okay. So we can start with Mr. Chin. So I'm clicking, but nothing is happening.
Okay, I've lost.
I'm click I'm clicking, but nothing is happening.
It's supposed to show like
So
this on the screen.
yeah, maybe only you can do that. I don't know. Nothing is happening.
Uh,
I'm clicking on
okay,
the
so
question.
please just kindly drop your comments again. Someone typed something now. Say virtual reality for me in architecture is underrated.
I would actually
Okay.
like to hear why you think it is. Just like I said, what's the purpose? Is it to what's the purpose? What would it do for that your uncle that has hammer that wants to build a house? What does it how does it solve his problem? Um Okay, so the first person said, let me just read it out. We all know that
Okay.
everyone, and it's actually the same person, Mr. Chimdiebwe. We all know that everyone has their strengths and weakness. My question is, how would this relate with someone who doesn't really have any interest in construction, but is very good with software and rendering? I'd say, keep at what you like as long as you know where you're going. Um, you're probably just going to end up having like a visualization studio where you're serving other consultants. So maybe architects come to you for rendering services. I know a few people who have done that as businesses. Um, I'd be very honest to say you won't make as much money as the people who actually do the buildings. Not like you won't make any money, but it's just like comparing, a lot of money and a lot more money because like the harder, less exciting skills usually get paid a premium. There's a reason why construction site workers kind of earn what they earn because it's kind of tedious, it's difficult, it's hard on your body. The one that's nice and cool and comfy, most people like it anyway. So the skills are in abundance. So you can carve a niche for yourself in visualization and rendering and all of that. Just be aware of where you're heading because there's a cap to your career. Like the best you can
Yeah.
have is your own business where you render that as a service.
Yeah, and
Um
I also
yeah,
think that when it comes to real life application, when it comes to virtual reality, augmented reality, and mixed reality, I think augmented reality has more practical application during construction than virtual reality. People tend to use virtual reality just during design to,
to
visualize the
communicate the
project.
idea.
Yeah, but
I think yeah.
when it gets
No,
to
I was going to say
construction,
yeah, sorry, beyond visualization though, virtual reality can help us. So it's just like again being kind of it can help us solve a lot of problems before we get to sites. Like there's a lot of thinking that can go on in virtual reality before getting to site. However, and this is the honest truth from my perspective, you can, it's not crucial. The project will not suffer greatly if you don't do it, which is why it still seems like it's not taking on. Because the truth is, at the end of the day, the industry as it is, everyone is struggling to like conserve expenses, right? So people will only do what is absolutely crucial. And as far as VR is, it's not like the project will not be successful if they don't do it. So it's still like a luxury kind of.
Yeah,
Sorry, you were saying something.
yeah, that's basically. I've already said. Oh, that's so. I'll
Okay,
just copy.
yes.
I'll be copying some of the questions that I couldn't access. I'll be copying them and then I'll put them on the screen here. So I think this one came from Vivian EU, which said that there are ways to curtail energy input during sustainable construction, and there are no parameters to calculate for them. Check
I think that's a
LEDS.
comment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's really a question.
Yeah, she said, are there online courses that can help me learn BIM? Yes, there are courses on Blaze Academy. I think, Daniel, if you can put a link. We do courses all the
Okay.
time
Yeah,
for
I will drop
people
the
wanting
link.
to learn about BIM. Um, BIM and digital design and engineering is largely underrated. Yes, actually, they are underrated, but I still think the buzz is kind of too much. I think people should. My thing is, people should promise what it is. Like it won't solve all the problems in the industry. It will solve many problems, but some people go a bit too far in the promise of them. Um, what else?
Yeah, I think Christopher dropped two comments. He say BIM and digital design and engineering is largely underrated, which is also
Yeah,
an opinion. And then
yeah.
he also mentioned that construction knowledge and knowing how things
Knowing how,
come together is highly underrated as well.
and that one,
Yeah,
I think I
so
have to agree.
yeah, so it's basically what we've been saying. Those boring aspects of the job, a lot of time people run away from them because they are not the satisfaction and the results are not so immediate. So people run towards the ones that will yield immediate results. So I'm also trying to paste some other comments and questions.
Yeah, I think Chindi also said, I believe teamwork solves this issue, whereby all strengths are put to good use. In a perfect world, yes, you're right. Everyone should focus on their strengths, and someone else would be better at construction management, and the person who likes to render should just render. But the business world is kind of tricky. For the most part, most architects can render. Some people are gurus at rendering, but most architects can give you a basic presentation, and it kind of is sufficient for many projects. You don't always need to wow them, depending on the category of project you're working on. And so, if you're going to be the person that renders only, competing with the person that renders documents, knows how to build, knows how to manage contracts, knows how to bid for projects. If you own a company, I mean, ask yourself who would you employ between those two people? It's a competitive world out there. We're all competing for the same jobs, the same resources. You kind of want to put your best foot forward. You don't want to be the less desirable option. Um, so yeah, is you just kind of have to have some hard conversations with yourself to decide, like just decide where your career is ending up, so that you
Yeah, I think
know what yeah what kind of efforts to put in.
this is also from Vivian. She said that in reality, most people are more interested in visualization. A lot of real estate firms, you need them to sell the projects to clients. So yeah, so some people
True,
just see it as a way to convince clients. And
but
then
that's what it
also,
is. It's a marketing tool. Yeah,
yeah, there's also one else. Okay.
most clients are interested in visualization. It definitely sells the project, but
Yes.
what they want is the thing, the actual thing. It's even like social media influencing, right? Your page is awesome, people like it, they come to you, but can you actually deliver? So you shouldn't neglect the skill in delivering in favor of the skill of marketing. Both of the balance is needed to succeed. And I think for me, what I just if no one, if even if you disagree with everything I say today, but because I, like I said, I came here to be a cautionary tale, right? Be realistic in your expectations of this industry. You kind of have to not look at what you would like to happen, look at what is happening, look at the realities of the profession. Yes, we can all make a difference and make a change, definitely. But look at the challenges you would face and the roadblocks ahead of you, right? Um, if you're going to stick with something, don't expect a different kind of outcome. Don't expect to be the manager of an architectural practice when your strength is in visualization. You unless you're very good at maybe politics, who knows? Anything can happen. But the person who gets to become the head of the practice or director of the studio is the person that knows quite a bit about all aspects of the design of the construction process, not just design and visualization. There's also design development. There's even in building and use management. There's a lot of things that go on in building beyond just that preliminary design phase. So be kind of realistic in your expectation of your career, depending on what you choose. It's still your choice, but don't expect one result from the wrong action, so to speak. That's just um
Yeah, so that's.
summary
I think the whole session is about for you to have a long term view
view.
to your decisions you are making at the early stages of your career. Because some things you do them because they are the easiest thing to do right now, but then in the long run you not end up limiting yourself because you spend so much time acquiring these skills and now you are not as valuable anymore in the industry. So this is also a comment from Towoju Aloba, which is also is not really a question. Say I agree, smart buildings are not just underrated; they are largely unknown to many.
Okay,
Yeah,
sorry, for the sake of time, can we just stick to can we stick to the questions because we were short a bit.
okay.
So there's one from LinkedIn user.
Yeah, that is not a question as well. He said, although BIM has come to stay and BIM is a process and not a software and is still evolving, can any professional be okay? Is a question actually. Can any professional be too focused on software, knowing fully well that the different dimensions of BIM, 3D to 6D, require various software proficiency?
Um, I'd say no, and this is not even just for architects. No one should be too focused on software. No person, no adult should ever be too focused on software. And the reason is softwares change like that. Um, Whatever is popular today probably will not be popular in the next 5 years. So do not build your life and your career around the software. The aim, the idea is to solve problems. So you identify the problems that need to be solved and find the tools that help you solve them. But if you are going to be a BIM specialist, most of the solutions are software based. And so you will need to know the best one for your problem. So it's not to be software focused, but more of being aware. As a BIM specialist, you have to be aware of the software because most of your problems are data related, they're digital problems, right? And if
Yeah.
you're going to be a BIM specialist, I think learning software on a regular basis should be your comfort zone. Like I said, I spend nothing less than 15 hours every week just learning something new. And it doesn't bother me at all. For someone else, that's like torture. But for me, I enjoy it. So do the thing, look at the reality of the thing you're trying to do in terms of your day to day job and decide if it's for you or not.
Yeah, I think it's just basically understanding that software cannot take the place of a professional. If
Yeah.
you, as an engineer, does not understand, if you don't know how to design, let's say, structural system or whatever, and then you are very good at a particular software, you are still going to design nonsense with using that software. So at the end of the day, it's having that practical understanding of the implication of what you are doing. So yes, it's good to be proficient at the software, but the real life application of what you are doing is what matters more in the long run.
Okay, I
Okay,
think
so
the
there's
last
also
question. Yeah,
a
that's the
question
last
from.
question.
So what advice will you give to someone who is starting career in interior design, both in terms of renderings and actual execution of the designs? It's actually the career paths and would appreciate the advice.
Um, hmm. Okay. Someone who is starting a career in interior design. Because I was already on this before I became a BIM person, this was actually my career path as well. Everyone thought I was going to be just world best interior designer because I spent so much time doing interior visualizations. So I don't want to sound too discouraging because I kind of left that path. So I don't want to impose my own views on you. But for interior design, again, the crux is in delivering a project. You should spend your time understanding materials because materials are key. And I don't mean rendering materials. I mean go to the market and know the difference between fabrics, the difference between woods, the difference between metals that last and metals that corrode over time. Your value is in the interior itself and not in the visualization. So spend more time actually when you get into the space, look at what works, look at what doesn't work, look at the lighting, look at the placement of furniture, how does it make people feel. Your work is in the real life, not on the computer is a way to communicate your idea. It's not That's not where the human beings are going to dwell, right? So yes, don't spend all your time knowing how the rendering will help you sell the idea, but that's not what's going to win you jobs. I know interior designers who don't know how to render at all, who are doing really well. And the other thing with interior design is you have to understand your market. Now, a lot of us architects and designers in Nigeria are very modern in thinking. We're very minimalist. The average Nigerian does not care for minimalist, and that's just what it is. So you kind of have to analyze the people you're serving and know what they like when it comes to interior because it's their space. As much as you are the informed professional that tells them what works and what doesn't, it's the space they want. So don't impose your own vision. Don't think it's what you like you'll be doing. It's what the client likes you'll be giving them. And that's what will work for you. But this is just my own limited perspective on that aspect of work. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so I think we're almost short of time already, but the most of the other
Yes.
things here are just some comments, not necessarily questions. So there's one from Stephen. Stephen have been dropping quite a number of comments, saying renderings in conjunction with knowledge of building construction is a very underrated combination. He also mentioned that
Mm-hmm.
as architects, the aesthetics is as important as the documentation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, of
I think
course,
what he
that's very
meant is
true.
in the next statement. That is ability
Yes,
to produce documentation that is actually beautiful to the
yeah, I get,
person looking at it, which I agree with.
yeah. And then there's also one last one here from Oluwatofarati Badamusi. I hope it's well pronounced. I joined a couple of minutes ago. I must sincerely commend the grit and sound knowledge base of the speaker and the moderator. Thanks for enlightening us on BEAM and general presentation and management too. So
Thank you
yeah,
so much, Verity.
for the thank you all for your time. And of course, this video it's still very much live. You can always watch it. You can always drop comments from whatever platform. This is stream live to LinkedIn, Facebook, and YouTube. So wherever you came in from, you can always go to the comment section and drop comments, and we'll do it to respond to your comment. But of course, almost everybody are coming from LinkedIn, so you can just drop your comments, and you can always attend to your comments or questions, whatever it is you have. So thank you all once again. Also, thanks to Victoria for sharing your knowledge with us today.
Thank you. I'm sure I
It's-
offended a few people. I'm just I don't want you to go through what I went through. That's all. Thank you so much. And
yeah,
yeah, these are just my opinions. Life always plays out differently in reality. So just focus on what you're focusing on and always keep your eyes open, I'd say. Thank you so much.
yeah, thank you very much. So this is a bi-weekly session. Hopefully every 2 weeks. Not a promise, but we'll try our best. Hopefully every 2 weeks we'll be having interviews and live discussions like this with professionals and thought leaders in the industry, spanning academia and the industry.
Yeah,
So
thank you.
thank you all once again. We'll communicate with you on the next session.
Awesome. Please don't forget to check out our courses on courses.blazing.net.
Yeah.
for
So
everyone who's interested in Revit or BIM and those sort of things. Thank you.
yeah. All right. Take care, everyone.
All right, bye.